They pounded on my door at dawn, flashing plastic badges and demanding entry. They called themselves HOA Police, but they had no idea who I really was, because I wasn't just another neighbor. I was a federal agent, and what happened next would turn this quiet street into a battleground. When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I'd found the perfect place to finally slow down. The lawns were neat, the houses identical but charming, and the street had that postcard look you see in real estate ads. For a while, I believed I'd stepped into a quiet suburb where weekends meant barbecues and kids riding bikes until the streetlights flicked on. But I was wrong, dead wrong. What looked peaceful on the surface hit a storm I never expected. One led by a woman who thought she owned everyone around her. Her name was Karen, and before long, I realized she wasn't just another neighbor. She was the self-proclaimed queen of the block, the kind of person who strutted around like the sidewalks were her red carpet. She bragged about being on the board, even though the real HOA hadn't been active for months. She barked at kids for leaving bikes on the curb and scolded homeowners about illegal paint colors, even though none of it was officially enforceable. It was obvious to anyone paying attention. Karen didn't want a neighborhood. She wanted a kingdom. First, I brushed it off. I had bigger things to worry about with my demanding job, and Karen's constant nagging seemed more annoying than dangerous. But whispers started to spread among the neighbors. Things about fines, rules, and her HOA enforcement team. Some laughed it off, but others looked genuinely nervous, like they believed she had real power. It made me curious, but not enough to take her seriously. After all, how much trouble could one entitled neighbor really cause? That answer came sooner than I imagined, because behind her smug smile and endless lectures, Karen was preparing something far bigger than petty notes or angry rants. She was organizing, scheming, and waiting for the right moment to make her move. And when she finally did, she wouldn't just knock on doors with passive-aggressive reminders. She would send people dressed like law enforcement, right to my doorstep. What I didn't know back then was that her obsession with control would spark a war on my street. And I was about to become her #1 target. It started one morning, just after sunrise, when a pounding shook my front door so hard it rattled the windows. I jolted awake, heart thumping, wondering if there was an emergency. I threw on a t-shirt, rushed to the hallway, and peered through the peephole. 2 figures stood on my porch. They wore matching navy uniforms with block letters stitched across the chest. HOA Police. My stomach dropped. Their badges gleamed, but even from behind the glass I could tell they looked cheap, like props from a party store. Still, their posture screamed authority, and they stared at my door with the kind of intensity that demanded obedience. I cracked the door open. "Can I help you?" The taller one, a man with a sharp jaw, jabbed a finger at me. "We're here on official business. Your property has multiple violations. We need to inspect your garage." Confusion quickly gave way to anger. "Violations? What violations?" The shorter one, a woman with piercing eyes, crossed her arms. "Don't make this harder. We have the authority to enter." My instincts kicked in. Their badges didn't have seals, their uniforms weren't regulation, and they hadn't mentioned a warrant. They weren't law enforcement, they were imposters. "I'm an FBI agent," I said calmly, my voice steady. "If you have real cause, show me proper paperwork." The man smirked. "Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes." And then I saw her, Karen, peering over their shoulders, arms folded, lips curled into a smug grin. She had orchestrated this circus. "Karen," I called out, narrowing my eyes, "what is this?" She lifted her chin. "Just making sure the rules are followed. You can't expect special treatment because of your job." My jaw tightened. This isn't an HOA, and they're not real police. The man shoved a paper toward me. It was a typed form, riddled with typos, claiming I was under official HOA investigation. No seal, no signature. Just nonsense. "That's not valid," I said flatly. "And unless you come back with real law enforcement and a warrant, you're not stepping foot inside." Karen's grin widened. "Careful. Refusal to cooperate will be noted." The man reached for a pair of plastic zip ties. "Want to test us?" My blood boiled. They weren't here for rules, they wanted to provoke me into a mistake. I forced myself to stay calm. "If you step onto my property again," I said, voice low and even, "you'll be the ones facing charges." The woman snapped a photo of me with her phone. "Smile for the records." They finally backed away, but Karen's smirk stayed burned in my mind. This wasn't over. That first encounter lit the fuse. Over the next few days, the so-called HOA police loitered at the end of my street, their fake cruiser parked with its lights off. Sometimes I'd catch them watching me from tinted windows, jotting in notebooks like they were conducting surveillance. One evening, as I pulled into my driveway, Karen was waiting, arms crossed. Beside her stood the same two officers. My stomach clenched, but I walked up, refusing to show fear. "Evening, Agent," the tall one said mockingly. "We need another word." "Not interested," I replied. Karen stepped forward. "You should be. We have reports of suspicious activity in your garage. Late-night noises. Strange visitors." I let out a bitter laugh. "Strange visitors? You mean my colleagues?" Karen's smile turned sharp. "Neighbors are concerned. If you have nothing to hide, let them look." I squared my shoulders. "You want in? Get a warrant. Until then, stay off my property." The female officer shoved a clipboard toward me, stacked with violation slips. I scanned the top one, improper curtain alignment. Another, unregistered vehicle. The absurdity almost made me laugh, until I saw the line about possible hazardous materials. Karen's eyes glinted. "You see, it's serious." I glared at her. "This is harassment." The tall officer leaned in close, his breath hot. "Careful, Agent. Interfering with neighborhood enforcement carries consequences." I didn't flinch. "Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime. And you're standing on my porch." For a long second, none of us moved. The air was so tense it felt electric. Finally, Karen broke the silence. "Fine," she said sweetly. "But every refusal goes on record. The HOA has eyes everywhere." They turned and walked away, leaving me simmering with anger. The neighbors across the street peeked from their windows, whispering. To them, it probably looked like I was the problem. And that was exactly how Karen wanted it. As I shut my door, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. The message read, "Better watch your step. We know who you are." My pulse spiked. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was a campaign to destroy me. The next morning, my boss summoned me to the office. His voice was tight over the phone. "We need to talk. Now." My stomach dropped. At headquarters, he met me in the hallway, arms folded. "Care to explain why local authorities are complaining about your behavior?" I blinked. "Local authorities? You mean Karen's play cops?" He frowned. "I don't care what you call them. I've got paperwork claiming you resisted inspection and threatened volunteers. It's sitting on my desk right now." Anger burned in my chest. "It's all fake. They're impersonators. I told them to leave my property." He rubbed his temples. "I want to believe you, but if complaints keep piling up, my hands are tied. Internal Affairs is already sniffing around." I swallowed hard. Internal Affairs was no joke. Once they started digging, even baseless rumors could bury a career. "I'll prove it," I said. "They're not legitimate." "Do it fast," he warned. "Because right now, you look like a liability." As I left his office, a chilling thought sank in. Karen wasn't just making noise anymore. She was planting seeds of doubt inside the very agency I worked for. If I didn't stop her, I wouldn't just lose my neighborhood. I'd lose everything. It wasn't just me anymore. Within days, neighbors began finding fake citations taped to their doors. One woman, Tamara, showed up at my porch holding a notice with trembling hands. "They're saying my paint color isn't approved," she whispered. "They're threatening eviction if I don't pay a fine." I scanned the paper. Same phony language. No signatures. Just scare tactics. "Don't pay it," I said firmly. "It's a scam." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what if it's real? I can't lose my house." That's when I realized Karen's plan wasn't just about me. She was spreading fear, turning the whole block into her personal kingdom. At night, I'd catch neighbors whispering and pointing at me like I was the troublemaker. Karen's narrative was working. She had the fake cops on her side, bogus paperwork in their hands, and terrified residents ready to believe anything she told them. And me? I was the rogue neighbor refusing to comply. The pressure was mounting from every angle. On the street, I was painted as the villain. At work, I was one step from suspension. And Karen was tightening her grip, one phony violation at a time. I needed proof, so I called a contact, Alvarez, a straight-shooting local cop I trusted. I told him everything. Fake uniforms, bogus citations, intimidation tactics. He listened, skeptical at first, but when I gave him the license plate number of the cruiser, he promised to check. A day later, he called back. That plate? Registered to a private security outfit out of state. No contracts with your HOA. No local license either. Relief and fury collided in my chest. Finally, confirmation. So they're illegal. Technically, yes, but unless we catch them in the act, it's shaky. And I need witnesses, neighbors who'll testify. Can you get them? I thought of Tamara, pale and shaking as she clutched her fake fine, of others who kept their blinds drawn whenever the cruiser passed. Fear had silenced them all. I'll try, I muttered, though I knew the odds. Karen wasn't just making up rules. She was building an empire. The real HOA was silent, phone lines dead, website outdated. It was as if she'd shut down every official channel and replaced it with her counterfeit version. That night, a flyer appeared under my wiper blade. HOA Police volunteers needed. Training at Karen's house. Membership fee required. My hands shook as I read it. She wasn't satisfied with 2 fake officers. She was recruiting an army. The note arrived a few days later, slipped into my mailbox with no signature. Community meeting tonight. Mandatory. It reeked of Karen. Part of me wanted to toss it in the trash, but another part knew this was my chance. If she was bold enough to gather everyone, she'd expose herself. That evening, I tucked a small recorder into my pocket and walked to the community center. Inside, nearly the whole neighborhood had gathered. Rows of folding chairs lined the room, and at the front stood Karen, beaming like a politician. 2 of her fake HOA cops flanked her like bodyguards. "Good evening, everyone," she chirped into a microphone. "Our community has faced disorder, disrespect, and danger. That's why I established the HOA Police, to protect property values and keep our streets safe." A smattering of applause broke out. Others exchanged nervous glances. I clenched my jaw. Enough. I stood. That's a lie. The room fell silent. Karen's smile froze. "Excuse me, your so-called HOA police are unlicensed. They belong to a private security company with no contract, no authority, and no right to issue fines. You're running a scam, Karen." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's eyes flashed. "Or maybe you're just bitter because you think you're above the rules." I pulled out my phone, showing screenshots Alvarez had sent me. "Here's proof. Their company isn't recognized by the state. No legal standing. And every citation you've handed out? Fake." One neighbor stood, holding up a paper. "Is that why this doesn't have a signature?" Murmurs erupted. People surged forward, grabbing citations from the stack Karen had laid out. "No seal. No authority. This is bogus." Karen's face went pale. She tried to snatch the papers back, but it was too late. Phones flashed as neighbors snapped photos, capturing evidence. One of the fake officers muttered, "I didn't sign up for this," before bolting for the door. The crowd was turning. For the first time, Karen looked cornered. And then Alvarez walked in. The room hushed as Alvarez strode forward, badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. His voice was firm, steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received complaints about unauthorized security activity in this neighborhood. Effective immediately, this is an active investigation." Karen stammered, "This is harassment. I have connections. Show me your authorization." Alvarez cut her off, nodding at the remaining officer. The man hesitated, then flashed his plastic badge. Alvarez didn't even blink. That's not official. Driver's license. Now. The officer's face flushed. He glanced at Karen, but she offered no lifeline. Finally, he bolted too, leaving her alone at the podium. Alvarez turned back to Karen. Ma'am, I need you to come with me for questioning. Right now. Her mask cracked. She sputtered, reaching for bravado. You can't do this. My uncle is the deputy director of the FBI. The crowd gasped. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. Good. Then he'll want to hear how you impersonated law enforcement and extorted your neighbors. Karen's composure crumbled as he cuffed her in front of everyone. She shrieked, demanding help, but no one moved. Not one neighbor defended her. As Alvarez led her out, I finally felt the tension in my chest loosen. For weeks she had ruled through fear, but tonight her empire collapsed. The aftermath spread fast. Karen's arrest made headlines in local papers. Fake HOA police busted in suburban scam. The real HOA resurfaced, launching an emergency audit. Their findings were damning. Karen had pocketed thousands in bogus fines, all funneled through the membership fees of her fake police. As for her uncle, the deputy director quietly resigned weeks later under family-related scrutiny. Officially, the Bureau claimed ignorance. Unofficially, whispers said his career ended because of her stunt. In the neighborhood, relief swept in like fresh air after a storm. The fake cruiser vanished. The phony citations stopped. Kids laughed in the streets again. Neighbors who once eyed me with suspicion now offered sheepish apologies. Tamara even baked me cookies as a thank you. At the FBI, Internal Affairs finally cleared my name. My boss leaned back in his chair one afternoon, shaking his head. Turns out you were right all along. You're back on track. The weight I'd been carrying for weeks finally lifted. I'd survived Karen's crusade, protected my career, and helped restore order to a community she almost destroyed. Looking back, I realized something chilling. The scariest enemies aren't always criminals on the street. Sometimes they're entitled people with just enough arrogance and just enough connections to make others believe they're untouchable. Karen thought she could turn a peaceful suburb into her personal kingdom. But in the end, her fake authority crumbled under the weight of the truth. So, if you ever hear a knock at your door and see plastic badges flashing in the dark, remember this story, because sometimes the battle for justice doesn't happen in courtrooms. It happens right on your front porch.